So good morning, everyone, and welcome to this second seminar in the ESEH seminar series, Environmental History Today, which this season is dedicated to all of the ESEH regions, and also the next season will be. So each month we will visit one region and hear what they are doing, at least some of it. And this time, so my name is Karl, and this time we're actually visiting my own region, which is the Baltic states. And it is my pleasure to introduce Karl Hein, who is a PhD candidate at Tallinn University, working on animal protection movements in Estonia. And as discussions, it's my pleasure to have here Maarja Kaaristo from Manchester University and Otto Latva from Turku University. And in the room with a strict eye on everything that is going on is also Karl's main supervisor, who is Ulrike Plath. And I welcome everybody else as well. It's nice to have so many people in the room. I think we will proceed so that Karl will first speak half an hour, 45 minutes. And then we have comments from Maarja and Otto, each from very different viewpoints, I hope. And then we open the floor to whatever questions you may have. And I hope you have many to help Karl go forward in what he's doing. So thank you very much from me. And Karl, the floor is yours. You can share your slides.
Okay. Can you see them?
You are not in the presentation. Oh, no.
Now I am?
Now you are.
Now I am. Okay.
So go ahead.
So hello, my name is Karl Hein, and I am a PhD student in Tallinn University. And I am writing my PhD thesis about the animal protection history in Estonia before World War II. And specifically, I am researching the activities of the animal welfare organizations in Estonia. And first, I will just give you a short historical introduction. As you probably know, the first animal welfare organization in the world was founded in London, in England. That was the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. It's said that the first animal welfare movement, they were created in the bigger industrialized cities in Western Europe, where there often was lots of animal cruelty. And the first animal protection society in the world was in London, and also the first animal protection laws were accepted in England also in 1820s. And that was the beginning of the animal welfare movement. And from there, in the 1830s, the animal welfare movement went on to the other parts of Europe. So in 1830s, there were animal welfare organizations created in, for example, in Belfast, that's in Northern Ireland, in Germany, Stuttgart, Munich, Dresden, Berlin, Hamburg, Frankfurt, and so on. So in 1830s and 1840s, there were animal welfare societies created, many in Germany, but also, as you can see, in France, in Scotland, in Ireland, and so on. And in the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, they were also created in other parts of Europe as well. And then in 1860s, the first animal welfare organization were created in the Russian Empire as well. As you probably know, Estonia was also part of Russian Empire at that time. And the first animal welfare organization in the Russian Empire was actually created just nearby in Livonia, the capital of modern Latvia, in Riga in 1861. And probably the ideas of animal welfare, they came to Riga also from Germany, since in Livonia there were many Baltic Germans, and the founders of the Riga Animal Protection Society, they were also Baltic Germans. So it's probably from Germany, the ideas of animal welfare, they arrived to Riga as well. And then in 1862, there was an animal welfare organization created in Odessa. And then in 1865 was the first animal welfare organization in the capital of Russia, in St. Petersburg. And that was the main or the most influential animal welfare organization probably in Russian Empire, since it was in the capital. It was called also the Russian Society for the Protection of Animals, and that was the society that probably influenced most the politics of Russia at that time as well. And Brian von Homme has written about it, how thanks to the St. Petersburg Society in 1866, there was the first animal welfare law accepted in the Russian Empire as well, that gave fines up to 10 rubles if you were abusing your animals, mainly horses. Then there was an animal welfare society founded in Petrozavodsk, it's in Karelia, and then in Vitebsk, that's in Belarus, and then in Warsaw, which is in Poland as well. And from there, the animal welfare movement came to Estonia as well. Estonia was part of Russian Empire at that time, and there was already an animal welfare society in Riga, in Livonia at that time. And also there were animal welfare societies basically two sides of Estonia. There was one in Riga, one in St. Petersburg. So in a way, it was logical that at some point the movement arrived to Estonia as well, since Estonia was between Riga and Petersburg. And in Estonia, the first Society of Animal Protection was founded in Tallinn in 1869. It was founded also by Baltic Germans. There were two doctors, Rogenhagen and Meidel, were the founders of the society. And that was the first and also the biggest and the most influential society in Estonia at the end of the 19th century, at least. And after that, there were many other societies as well founded in Estonia. Before 1900, there were altogether 7 societies in Estonia. One was founded in Narva, and also societies in Tartu, Viljandi, and Kuressaare, and one in Valga in 1884, and one in Pärnu in 1900. So altogether, there were 7 animal welfare societies in Estonia before 20th century. Here I have put them on a graph as well. You can see how they were created. The first one was in 1869 in Tallinn, then in Narva, Tartu, Viljandi, Kuressaare, Valga, and Pärnu. And also what you can see from this graph is that in 1918, when Estonia became independent, actually most of the societies disappeared. What I have read from the newspapers as well and from the articles from that time is that the Tallinn Society was the most active. The Tallinn Society had the most members. Many other societies were really small, only had like up to 10 members or 20 members or something like that. And many of them were just founded, but they faded away in the beginning of the 20th century. And also during the World War I and during the Estonian War of Independence, many societies disappeared. So in 1918, when Estonia became independent, only one society survived, and that was the Tallinn Animal Protection Society. It had about 500 to 600 members during World War I. And also what you can see from that graph is that after independence in 1920s, 1930s, many more societies were founded in other parts of Estonia. In Tartu, there was a society in 1921, Narva, 1926, then in Haapsalu, Petseri, Jõhvi, Rakvere, Valga, and so on and so on. So basically, by 1934, there were already 22 animal protection societies in Estonia. Quite a large number. And here I have put them on a map as well. You can see where they were situated. So there were 22 animal welfare societies in Estonia, and you can also see that the interwar period, the time from the independence of Estonia from 1918 until Second World War, 1918 to 1940, was apparently the most active period for the Estonian animal welfare movement. There were already altogether 22 animal welfare organizations in Estonia. The number of the organizations grew, and also the number of the animal welfare activists grew significantly. So there were many thousand activists that were connected with the movement. And also the movement got more and more organized as well. The movements, they cooperated with each other. And in 1929, they also created the Estonian Union for the Protection of Animals, which was like an umbrella organization for all the animal protection movements. The union was founded by Erich Kattenberg here, who was also the main leader of the movement, the main influencer of the movement, who was one of the most important organizers of the creation of most of the movements as well. Here you can see the symbol of the movement of the union as well. The symbol of the animal welfare in Estonia, it was the green cross. So basically in the interwar period, you can see that the movement grows a lot. It moves, it turns to be quite active. And you can see that also from the newspapers at that time. So basically what I am doing for my PhD research is that I'm reading the archives, but I'm also looking very much into the newspaper in the 1920s, 1930s. And when you look up the word loomakaitse or animal welfare or animal protection in English from the Estonian digitalized newspapers, you can see that the topic of animal protection is really much talked about in the 1920s and in the 1930s. Of course, here you have a graph where it is showed the occurrence of the word animal protection in the Estonian digitalized newspapers. It's not completely accurate since many of the newspapers from the Soviet times are not digitalized, but still you can see how in the beginning of the 19th century, the topic is not really much talked about, but then in the 1920s, especially after 1924, the topic of animal welfare is really much talked about. It's really much discussed. So many articles about animal protection are published in the newspapers as well. So it grew to be an active movement. And what I'm also looking into in my PhD work are the activities of the animal welfare activists. So what do they do? First and foremost, they were involved in direct animal protection, in hands-on animal protection. Especially they protected the horse in the urban space. The horse was one of the most important animals that you can see in the city space in the end of the 19th century and also in the interwar period. It is said that in the 1930s, there were approximately like 200,000 horses in Estonia, which is one horse for every 4 or 5 Estonians, for 4 or 5 persons. And the horses were really often abused. They were beaten, they were left to the cold in the winter time. They were not given enough water during the summertime. They were often exhausted, often lame or injured. The horses were used. And that was the main thing that the animal protection activists did especially in the end of the 19th century, but also in the beginning of the 20th century, that they had inspectors in the city who patrolled around the city, for example, in Tallinn, but also in Narva, and just kept an eye on the animals in the city space, how the teamsters, for example, the coachman, how they use their horses, were there any beatings, were there any abuses, and also they made regular inspections for the teamsters as well. Here you can see one inspection of the horses in 1936, where the Animal Welfare Society of Nõmme was looking through the carriages and the horses that are used by the Teamsters in Nõmme at that time. Are there any problems? Are they using good carriages and so on and so on? And also one thing that they often did is that they intervened when they saw animal abuse. There were also many conflicts. The newspapers, you can read also how sometimes the Teamsters they attacked the animal protectors. There were some fights even between the activists and between the Teamsters. So they tried to protect the horses in any way possible. Also, one topic that they dealt with was the horse cars in Tallinn. That was before the interwar period. From 1888 to 1918, in Tallinn, they used horse cars, which were basically wagons or trolleys that were drawn by horses. And yes, you can see from the pictures as well, often the horses that they used for the horse cart, they were really not well kept. They were not well fed. They were really exhausted, often injured. And one thing that the animal protectors did also is that they made inspections for the horse cars in Tallinn. They intervened. Sometimes they took away the horse if the horse was injured, if the horse car was not allowed to use the horse. And also often they went to the court as well against the horse cars in Tallinn. So they used the horse cars that were the trolleys that were drawn by the horses from 1888 to 1918. And in 1918, the horse cars in Tallinn were actually, they disappeared. They were replaced by electric trams in the 1920s. And also what did they do is that they tried to improve the city space in every way possible. They made drinking spots for horses. They built feeding houses and nesting boxes for the birds. And also they cooperated with the local governments to improve the conditions of the roads, especially in late autumn and in spring times. The roads were often really muddy, not good. So the animal welfare activists, they cooperated with the local government, with the city government, to make better roads, to draw that attention to the issues where the roads are not good enough for the horses, for example. Also, they did a lot of legislative work. There were many lawyers that were members of the animal welfare societies, and they worked out many local rules and regulations how to use the animals in the cities. They made many additions to the Estonian criminal law. They had the animal abuse paragraph put into the Estonian criminal law, for example. Also, they were connected with creating the laws for hunting and bird protection. And they made also many drafts for creating a nationwide animal protection law for Estonia as well. Unfortunately, the official animal protection law was never accepted. President Pats was actually willing to take the animal protection law into work, but then the Second World War basically put it to hold. So the animal protection law was never accepted in Estonia. And there were also many court trials where the animal welfare activists went to the court to protect the animals. They themselves also, they saw themselves as the protectors of animals, that they speak for the animals. They are the protectors of dogs and cats in the court. And that was also something that was very much said in the newspapers as well. Here you can see there's one article from the newspapers in 1925, how the dogs and cats of Tallinn are in court for their rights. And the animal welfare activists, they were the ones who were protecting the animals in the courts. Then also one thing that animal welfare activists did is that they tried to spread the word. There was lots of propaganda given out by the activists, many books, leaflets, pamphlets, posters. Also, as I mentioned before, the activists often wrote articles in the newspapers, but also they had regular speeches in the radio about animal welfare. They made many movie nights, film showings in cinemas, and also they held speeches in churches, in schools, in public events. So they tried to spread the word of animal protection as much as possible as well. Here you can also see some propaganda. This is, for example, a book, Love Animals, Stories for Children. It's from 1900, which is like a animal welfare propaganda book in a way for children. The animal welfare activists, they were especially interested in working with the children. They thought that the children should be the mostly involved with the animal protection movement. And also the activists, they made many youth groups in schools, many animal protection clubs in schools as well, which were also quite big. In Tallinn, for example, there were over 4,000 school kids were involved in animal welfare clubs or youth groups. Here you can see some posters also from the Tartu Animal Welfare Society. Also, they held many different events, charity parties, dances, masquerades, amateur theater plays, exhibitions. Here are also some pictures. I like this picture very much. This is like an amateur theater play in Nõmme Animal Welfare Society. They made like a mock trial for an animal torturer. And there are not many pictures of the events that happened. It's not so easy to photograph everything. But here is like one theater play that they made. And also the theater play that they made, they sold tickets for it also. So all the funds that they collected from the theater plays and from the parties, they went, of course, to the animal protection as well. And also they made many art exhibitions to collect money for animal protection. One thing also that they did is that they started the celebration of the Animal Protection Day on October 4th, which was a tradition that they tried to create in Estonia. The tradition of celebrating the World Animal Day or Animal Protection Day, it comes actually from the southern part of Germany, from the Catholic part of Germany. And it was on the October 4th because October 4th was the veneration day of Saint Francis, who is the patron saint of animals. And in the Catholic parts of Germany, already like in 1926 or so, on October 4th, Animal Welfare Society started to celebrate this day as the Animal Protection Day. And in the 1928 on, and in the 1930s, in Estonia as well, they really tried to start the tradition of celebrating the World Animal Day in Estonia as well. And it went quite well, actually. There were many speeches on that day. Usually there were many articles written on the October 4th for the World Animal Day, many posters in the city space, usually many public events, always a speech in the radio about animal welfare. And like in 1938, for example, there were in Kadriorg, there were animals brought in to see, like a small zoo was created for the World Animal Day. There were films shown about animals. So it was actually a quite big tradition that they tried to start in Estonia, celebration of the World Animal Day. Here you can also see some posters of the World Animal Day. Here you can see how they put a picture of the patron saint of animals, Saint Francis, to the posters as well, which is a little bit bizarre because Estonia is not a Catholic country, but they always had articles and stories written about Saint Francis during the World Animal Day. So it was, in a way, like a bizarre way of bringing some Catholic customs the animal welfare movement also in the 1930s. And one more thing that they did is that they published animal welfare magazines, many of them, especially in the 1930s, which are quite important for my research as well. There were the journals Animal Protector, Loomakaitsja, the Journal of Animal Protection, Estonian Friend of Animals, and then Nature Conservation and Tourism, that also had articles about animal protection and also information about activities of the movement. And also it had like many news articles about what other countries are doing on the field of animal protection, what are the societies doing in Germany, in Italy, in Finland, in many other countries as well. So it was quite an important journal for the activists as well. Then as organizations, they had annual meetings, board meetings, parties, different events, and so on. Here you can see one Congress of the Animal Welfare Societies in 1934. Every summer they held an Animal Welfare Congress, which meant that every society sent their representatives to one city in Estonia. It's always held in summer. Usually it was 2 or 3 days. And there they discussed what should be the next topics that they should focus on animal welfare. Which is interesting here also is you can see that there are many women in the movement. Here are the representatives of the different societies in Estonia. Every society sent like 3, 4, 5 representatives to the Congress. And you can see that many of the representatives are women as well who are active in the movement. And here's another one from the following year, from 1935. Here the men are dominating, but still you can see many women also active in the movement. And also they gave out awards, medals, diplomas. Here you can see one of the most important awards they gave to the animal protectors when somebody was really active in the movement or was really doing some good work in terms of animal protection, in terms of animal welfare. Then many people were given the official Green Cross medal, 3 different Green Cross medals. This was the first class medal. This, I think, the other one was the 3rd class medal. And it was given to the most active people on the field of animal protections. It also gave out many diplomas as well, medals and diplomas, the awards that were given out by the movement. And the end of the movement came in 1940 when Estonia was occupied by the Soviet Union. In Soviet Union, the animal welfare societies were not operated anymore. Actually, the topic of animal protection was not, you could even say it was a little bit frowned upon in the 1940s and the 1950s in the Soviet Union. But also all kinds of civic activity was banned during, after the World War II. So the Estonian animal welfare organizations, they disappeared after the war. The leaders of the movement fled the country, or the leaders of the movement were arrested. And one of the most important leaders of the movement was Erich Kattenberg or Erik Kattemaa. There you have a picture of him arrested as well. After the arresting, he fled on to the United States, where I think he died in 1986 or so. So that was the end of the movement. Yeah, and also the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for listening. Are there any questions?
So maybe you can stop sharing the screen for a moment. And I was thinking about, do we do the comments round first and then open the floor? So maybe we start with Maarja, who has actually worked on Estonian animal keeping habits, right? In the
Hello, good morning. I hope that my computer will kind of work properly, but if not, then I will just switch the camera off and be like that. So yes, first of all, thank you very much, Karl, for this very interesting, very engaging, very well researched.
You are wobbly, Maarja.
I think you should turn the camera off. Right now, I'm not really hearing anything. Try without the camera.
I think that maybe it would be even better if we give Otto the floor first, and then I will just quickly restart. See what's happening.
We'll do that. We'll be waiting you back. So we start with Otto, who has worked on all things animal, but not in Estonia.
Not in Estonia. Well, I've mainly been studying the human-animal and human-plant relationship in the context of marine environment. Also, mainly the human-animal relationship between wild animals and humans. But well, first of all, it was really interesting and thought-provoking presentation. Thank you very much. And as I was going to say, my knowledge on this theme mainly concerns the animal welfare movement in Finland. I've not studied that by myself, but I have been advising some MA theses that have been studied, who have studied the theme. And then what I can say, reflecting with those works, I can say that in Finland, the establishment of animal rights organization followed seemingly more or less the same pattern as in Estonia. I think the first organization established in Finland was probably in the 1870s or something like that.
71, I think, in Turku.
Yeah, actually, yeah. The same city that I am at the moment, yeah. And yeah, and it's also really interesting to note that in Finland, the animal welfare movement focused particularly on the protection of horses and small birds, as it did in Estonia as well. And well, what I can remember, or from the studies that I have also conducted, for instance, many of the persons that were active in animal welfare organizations were actually they wanted people to hunt, for instance, wolves and bears and different kind of animals that were regarded as not so useful animals. And it's really interesting that, for instance, if we are reflecting today animal right movement, it was really different. There was certain agenda, what kind of animals people were supposed to protect and what should be left out of this protection movement. But anyway, what I can recall, they were also in Finland, they were also very active by publishing magazines, and they were also actively lobbying their agenda on protecting especially horses and small birds. But in Finland, however, the animal welfare movement has been active since the late 19th century. And after the Second World War, I think it focused particularly on the protection of laboratory animals thereafter. And it is really strange. I don't actually know the reason why they kind of left out all these, the horse protection and protection of small birds or any of these animals that were regarded as innocent part of nature. The laboratory animals became the new kind of theme after the Second World War. And I think that was also part of the global movement. But what else? About the methods, actually, I wanted also to say that it was really good method that you have looked at the digitized newspaper material. That could be really good source for tracking this kind of like overall change in the waves, or how the organization have changed and so on. And regarding all this, what I have now said, I have also a few questions for you. First, I of course wanted to ask that how much research has been done on this topic in Estonia before? And I also wonder, there is also a second question that I particularly want to ask, because in Finland, for example, the protection of small birds left a big cultural imprint on Finnish culture. The attempt to protect these birds is well illustrated, for example, in Christmas carols, written by Zacharias Topelius, a central figure in the animal rights movement in Finland at the end of the 19th century. And I was wondering, is there any similar cultural imprint in Estonian culture that the 19th and the beginning of 20th century animal rights movement left on mainstream culture? For instance, concerning horses or small birds.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't really. It's a good topic to look into how the movement has influenced culture as well. I don't really know. But to the first question, how much it has been researched? Not so much. I'm quite lucky actually with the topic because there are many sources. There are all the animal welfare journals, and actually the animal welfare activists themselves, they looked into the history of the animal welfare movement in Estonia in the 1930s. But after the independence in 1991, well, there has been one article by Otto in 2006, I think. And then my supervisor, Ulrike Plaat, has written about it, about the animal welfare movement. I think mostly from the perspective of the Riga Society of Animal Welfare. So the Tallinn Society, it's not so well researched. So it's I'm quite lucky with the topic actually. So there are not many articles about it.
Yeah, well, that sounds really good. There is certainly a point for the study. Yes.
Yeah. But
thank you.
Yeah. Of course, Ulrike Plaat has looked into it also. And, she has some articles and also some coming, focusing on Riga mostly. Right, Ulrike. Okay, and the other questions, I don't know really how the movement has influenced like culture, like the stories. That's something really I would like to look into because like after World War II, the movement was actually banned in Estonia. All the voluntary movements were banned, and it was not. There was nothing actually done in the field of animal welfare like after the Second World War. So the animal welfare after Second World War started from the Tartu University Society of Nature Protection, for example, or from the university societies, for example. But the voluntary societies for animal protection, they were restored only in the end of 1980s, actually. So actually, there were no voluntary association about animal protection in the Soviet times. But I would really like to see were there like any influence, like in the thinking of the people. Are there any memories in the memoirs, for example, of the people about has there been any effect like after the war as well? Because active movement it died out basically in the Soviet times. But yeah, I don't know actually like about the songs, for example. Are there any traces in the songs about animal welfare? So on.
Yeah, but
also the research of small birds. I think it was bigger in Finland than in Estonia. The focus on small birds. The small birds were important in 19th century in England and also somewhat in the early Estonian animal welfare societies. But I know that in Sweden, the first animal welfare society was actually the society that tried to protect the small birds, right? I think. I don't remember who was the one who created the movement, but I know that to Finland, the movement of animal protection, it came from Sweden, and also at first it focused mainly on small birds. But I think that was not the case in Estonia. In Estonia, it was more about the horses, and the movement came not from Sweden, but from Germany. I think that's a bit different, the context of Finland and Estonia in a way. I don't know, have I answered anything?
Yeah. Thank you very much. I was just to add, if there is any of the main figures of the movement, if they have written any poetry or something like that, or like what could have been like affecting nowadays or something like that.
They wrote poetry, but I don't know anything that has like affected today's poetry or anything. There were many poems, for example, that were published in the journals of animal protection in the 1930s. And also I know one of the leaders of the movement, Berhan Matusalem, when after World War II, he fled Estonia, he moved to England, and there he had a poetry book about the topic, on the topic of animals. I have not read it, I don't have it on me, but these poems are in English, and they didn't come to Estonia ever, I think. So there's not much effect, I think, in the Estonian poetry, but it should be researched more, I think. I haven't looked into it, actually, literature after the World War II.
Good. Thank you. I think I will give now a stage for Maarja and other.
Let's see if the restart worked. Yeah, so I think that I would also, just one thing I would like to say is kind of, it is very interesting to also position Karl's very important work within the Estonian context as well, and in the Estonian historiography context, because it might actually be quite surprising, but this topic of animal protection and animal welfare in the historical perspective, it is not well studied in Estonia at all. And Karl is actually like one of the pioneers who is doing this very important work. And in that sense, really well done. And of course, but if we look back traditionally throughout the 20th century, research on animals has done in the historical perspective, also including by ethnographers or ethnologists, as well as archaeologists and historians, obviously, always taking this quite utilitarian perspective. So animals as the functional beings, and also a lot of research has focused on the kind of farm work perspective, and not even talking about the animal, but focusing on the farm work equipment related to the animals. So in that sense, so that is the kind of the background where this work is kind of positioned. And then in Estonia, maybe this work only started again, like kind of really now trying to pay attention to the human-animal relationship in the 2000s, or maybe in the end of 1990s. There were there was an important seminar series in the Estonian Literary Museum based on the animal-human relationship, and these were very, very good seminar series, mostly from the folkloristic, ethnological perspective, but also archaeology, historians, etc. Focusing on domesticated animals, pets, and pets, wild animals, but out of all these seminars, there was only one article that is only focused on the animal protection movement, and that one is from 2006. So this is the field where Karl is working is obviously very, very wide, and so this topic really allows to kind of look. You're looking at the interwar period, to look this kind of societal transformations, but also kind of in this more post-humanist way of how the human-animal relationships and have transformed and changed. But then, of course, like this kind of tension between the animal as fulfilling some kind of function, and animal as more maybe symbolic, but then also animal as a companion, that has already been there already since the 30s, because also Estonian ethnologists in the 30s were writing about animals and saying things like, yes, it was important because of the work, but also because of the love towards the animals. So that, for instance, they were bringing them to their living quarters during the winter. And of course, I know that you have limited time and you don't have so you didn't have so much time. But one of the questions I wanted to ask is maybe if you were to, like, as part of this tradition now, if you were to position yourself somehow theoretically, like where would you look at animals? Would you more go into this more functionalist or more symbolic or post-humanist strand of theorizing about the human and animal relationships? And that was one of the questions I had. And also just feel free to not reply if Otto has already asked while I was restarting. I also was wondering about the sources and your choice of sources. You said you're also working with archival sources, but this was more based on the media sources, right?
Yeah.
So I was hoping to find out more about the archival sources. What is there? What is the most important to study? Do you have plans to study these archival sources? What kind of sources they are? Is it more like this? I would imagine the minutes of the meetings and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one thing. Another thing I was thinking about while listening was the kind of wider philosophical background of the movement in the 1920s and 30s. So where the kind of links with vegetarianism and how much, and also like what were people like Erich Gottenberg reading while they were, where did they get these ideas? So the kind of philosophical underpinnings of their thinking when they started these organizations, because as you very well showed in the beginning, this was part of the wider movement that started in the 19th century in Europe, and so it kind of makes also Estonia this very interesting case study of on one hand we have these wider influences and ideas coming on, and then they kind of have to mix with this local situation of Estonians' kind of traditional understandings and relationship with animals as farm animals, as working animals, as pets, as in what is a pet, and is there, and so these kind of questions. And my very last question is to you as a historian. What do you think is the history of animals, and is it possible? And should we write about history of animals? And of course, we can write about and think about the history of human-animal relationships from the human perspective. But if you now had to kind of imagine yourself in a different position and maybe taking the animals' point of view. So what do you think the history of animals would be from the position of these animals if they were to write the history of the animal protection in the interwar period? So those were some of my rambling ideas and thoughts while I was listening to this this presentation. And again, thank you very much, because it's really important topic, and it's not only for yourself but also like for your future PhD students. There is a lot to do.
Thank you. Thank you. You had so many questions. I wrote something down, luckily. First, you had the question, where am I in theoretical perspective? How do I look at the relationships between humans and animals? That is actually something I am writing about right now. Like, I want to see that's actually one of the objectives, something that I want to find out with my PhD work. I want to see what were the relationships between Estonians, between humans and animals in Estonia. So far, I also think that the relationship was quite utilitarian. It was quite practical, quite speciesist, quite focused on the utility we can get from the animals. The Estonian farmers, especially in the 19th century, they were not interested so much in the feelings of animals and so on. And I think that was exactly something that the animal welfare activists, they tried to change. They tried to somehow change the way how people see animals. But that was, I think, one of the main objectives that the Estonian animal welfare activists tried to make it, that they tried to make this kind of shift in the way how people think about animals. But I think it was mainly utilitarian. Yeah, it started from that point, I think. Yeah, so I think in my PhD work, I criticized this idea quite a lot. How were the attitudes towards animals? So it is said by Erika Fudge, for example, that you cannot do animal history like neutrally without having some kind of ethical positions. And I think I have also found out when I'm writing this work right now, it's really difficult not to take any position, to be completely objective, because when you try to give an overview what was the attitudes towards animals in the Estonian farm society, for example, you have to say that it was speciesist, it was utilitarian, it was anthropocentric, it was hierarchical, and so on. And these are all actually, in a way, negative attitudes towards animals. So when I write about what were the attitudes toward animals, I actually, in a way, I criticize it as well. I say that Estonian attitudes towards animal, it was anthropocentric, it was speciesist, it was not the way it should be, for example. So I think this is where I start from. And I think my influence is very much also like from Peter Singer, from all the animal ethicist literature. So this is where I start from also. Yeah. I hope that answered the first question somewhat. Thank you. Then the other one is, what are the sources from the archives? Also, like, I love in a way my PhD work because there are so many sources in the newspapers, there are animal welfare journals. And also when you go to the archives, there is actually this one word in Estonian, loomakaitse, and everything is connected with this one word, loomakaitse. So when you go to the Estonian archive system, EISE, find exactly 119 sources that are connected with the word loomakaitse. They just have to read them through. So it's working with archives, it's also not really difficult. Also, of course, I have some other words also I look into, but loomakaitse is the main word. And most of the sources I have in the archives are from the 1920s, from the 1930s, and are the registration documents of different societies. As I said, there were 22 societies registered like in the 1920s, 1930s, and most of them are the registration documents. But there are also many letters between the societies, lots of correspondence, also board meetings you can find, and also some court processes also. So many different documents, but most of them are like the registration documents and the documents of the societies, like board meetings and like, for example, who had paid the fee for being a member of the society, for example, and so on. But there is a wide variety of sources, but most of them are all from the end of 1920s, from the beginning of the 1930s. I suppose my work will also be mostly about the interwar periods. It's quite sad that I cannot find almost any archive sources from the 1800s. There's nothing much from the 1860s, 1870s of the work that was done in the end of the 19th century. And also, actually, when I look into the 1930s journals of animal protection, they also say that many of the archival documents from the 1800s have been destroyed during the World War I or have been sent to Russia during the World War I or during Independence War. So there is not much from the 1800s. So that is also why I think from in the 1800s, I'm mostly focusing on the newspaper articles, and in the interwar period, I can use more of the archival documents as well. Yeah, and also I have the journals, I have the newspaper articles, and I would really like to find some, I don't know, some memoirs or some other types of sources, maybe some correspondence also from the 19th century. But I'm still going to look into the memoirs at some point. I hope I have time. Is it okay with the second question? Great, thank you. And now, third question you had: what is the wider philosophical background in the movement? What did Erich Kattenberg read? And are there any links with vegetarianism? There are not very many links with vegetarianism. There are some vegetarians in the Estonian animal welfare movement as well, but they are more like an exception. They're not the rule. There are not very many of them. But the activists are quite well read. Mostly they have probably read the journals of German animal welfare movements. The German animal welfare movements, they also have their own journals. And this is, I think, the main philosophical source for the Estonian activists as well. And also they have read very often, for example, Henry David Salt. Salt is like from one English author from the end of 1900s. And also, for example, the Estonian animal welfare journals, they have published, for example, some text from Schopenhauer. So they are quite well read. They know quite a lot about the philosophy of animal welfare. And also there is one article or one interview with Erich Kattenberg, the leader of the movement, where the journalist went to the home of Erich Kattenberg and said that Erich Kattenberg's home is filled with all kinds of different books and journals from all over the world, that he has animal welfare journals in English, in French, in Russian, in German, in any language, from India to the United States, basically. So I know that the leader of the movement, the Kattenberg, was also really well read, and he read in many different languages and read mainly the journals from different parts of Europe. So I think he was one of the main people who had all the literature brought into his home also. And also I know that animal welfare societies, they tried to create an animal welfare library for Estonia as well. But I think it never happened, really. But there was this discussion that they should create an animal welfare library with all the books and journals that they have from all over the world about animal welfare. So there was quite a lot of information coming from different parts of the world. And also, I think the movement was quite international as well, because the Estonian society, they sent their own journals to India, to United States, to England. They had correspondence with other movements as well. they had the other journals sent to them as well. So they exchanged journals quite a lot. Is it okay with the third? I have to ask. And now the fourth. Is it possible to write history of animals? Is it possible to look at the history from the animal point of view? I don't know. I think it might be possible, but I think it's really hard. And it's much easier to write about the human-animal relationship because all the sources we have in the archives are from humans. So they describe the human relationship with animals. But I think it would be also possible to write about the history of animals as well. Of course, it's also from the human point of view, but you can take the focus point as animal as well. But it's quite much more difficult because the animals don't write anything; they don't speak any language. So it's you don't have direct sources, but at the same time, like it's the same with any historical person. Whoever you research from the history, you research this person from secondary sources. So why not write from the animal perspective, animal point of view as well? I think it's not totally impossible, but it's much more harder. And as you pointed out yourself as well, actually, if you write the history from the animal point of view, the history will be totally different. Like World War I is something totally different for horse than it is for human, for example, or industrialization is something completely different for animals that it is for the humans. So actually, I think it's something that should be done and something that would be really interesting to do, to shift our own point of view. What does the French Revolution mean for the animals? What does the World War I mean for animals? It's definitely something interesting to try, at least, even if it's not completely possible. These are the 4 questions. I think I answered all of them.
Thank you very much. And I guess I just want to say one comment is that, of course, I do agree with you that, the kind of traditional or let's say 19th, 20th, beginning of 20th century Estonians' relationship with animals was very utilitarian and etc. But I think that it's also very important to still kind of keep in mind that it was not only utilitarian and animals kind of in the traditional Estonian peasant society, they were still regarded as part of that whole kind of home circle or family circle in a way. And also in terms of like the kind of experiential terms that even though that we know, all these problematic aspects of these relationships, that, even the way how they were coexisting and sharing the spaces with these animals, like for instance, in the winter, you would literally have the chickens under your bed and the small animals sleeping, next to your bed and the horse in the next room. So that was a completely different dynamic of what we are, even imagining. And I also think that it's kind of easy for us to kind of take that more negative view because you are studying your materials on the animal protection movement, and so you're getting like one kind of message or approach because they were dealing with these problematic aspects of this relationship. The same with me when I was studying the court cases in the 19th century. I only got to read about the bad things that happened, the attacks and animal abuse, etc. So I think that to kind of balance it out, it would also be very useful to kind of actually for you as well to go back into this kind of ethnological perspective or maybe even folkloristic perspective of which because in the folklore you can then see how they thought about the animals and what this relationship was, and also that how not all these relationships were utilitarian, because even with cats, you could say that the cat relationship is utilitarian. Cat is catching the mice. But actually, in actuality, that was not maybe even always the case. So I think it's important to kind of get this wider perspective as well. Okay, that's it from me. I will now give floor to other people to ask questions. Thank you so much.
I think also like the utilitarianism, it means that animals have instrumental value and they have like economic value. But actually it also means that animals, they do have value, like having instrumental value, having economic value. It means that they are actually valuable. You have to keep them warm. You have to keep them safe. You cannot abuse them if they have like this instrumental and economic value. And I think like from this instrumental value, it's actually quite a short step to have actually like this real emotional value. Like when you start valuing your horse because it's useful for you, it's useful for you economically, then the next step is to have like this connection with the horse, to see that you like the horse because it's valuable in itself, in a way.
Yeah, of course. But also you could, but of course you could also say that that thing about the value is a problem in itself, because when the animal became, you know, a commodity, essentially, when the human subject became the owner of the animal subject, and the whole relationship between humans and animals historically it completely changed, because suddenly the animal became from kind of equal partner living in the forest to commodity to be owned, and etc. etc. So yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, and also when you look at the folk traditions of Estonia, it's also filled with, for example, small little proverbs saying about how you have to keep your animal safe, how you have to take care of your animals. It's not totally, yeah, it exists. Absolutely.
So I think it's time for us to open the floor. I saw Cosmin had his hand up at some point during the talks, and if this question is still up, so you would be the first, and then we have a couple in the chat, and Yule has a hand up. I can't see all your faces in the screen, so if you use your digital hands, it's very helpful. Otherwise, you can just write in the chat that me too. So, but maybe Cosmin, if your question is still there.
Okay, so some of the questions were already answered and they were already discussed, but I was just thinking that so I'm from Romania, and I'm also looking at some of the similar issues. I saw some sources that they have similar patterns that evolve like the one in Estonia, and I also noticed some differences, or there are some associations that deal with animal protection. For example, you have the nature study movement that appears in the secondary schools that start to celebrate the bird and tree day. So they don't collaborate with the nature protection movement, but they do stuff before the 20th century, and they are doing in the same pattern from because the birds are useful for the extermination of pests, what Anastasia Fedotova just said, and they don't collaborate with the Romanian Protection Association, but they are doing stuff in the secondary schools. And also what I wanted to say about experiments in laboratories, maybe there is something that appears at the end of the 19th century is the bacteriological laboratories that spread all over Europe. And they do loads of experiments on horses, on rabbits, and the Romanian associations are trying to pull out all their experiments and point the fingers that, okay, it's not okay to experiment on 100 horses and that kind of stuff. So I was just wondering if you noticed something similar regarding the research in bacteriological laboratories. And another question that I had, so in Romania, you have this also relationship about how animal protection deals with the racialization of the other in Estonia, maybe. But in Romania, for example, you have all this animal protection texts that deals with the racialization of the Roma. When they're referring to birds, they always fell in this stuff that they are pointing to the Roma that there are like that and that kind of stereotypes that are promoted within this movement. So that will be another question, if you notice anything related to race issues and that kind of stuff. And also there's the same pattern that evolves in Austro-Hungarian Empire. They are just pointing to the Romanians, that they are scavengers, they are eating the birds like barbarians and that kind of stuff. So you have like different layers of racialization here. And yeah, and yeah, I think that's all about my intervention. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there is Romania is sometimes mentioned in Estonian journals of animal welfare as well. Not much, but they say that, for example, once that something that thanks to the Animal Welfare Association or something like that, the using of bears in circuses in Romania is forbidden. For example, I have something like that in the animal welfare journals, actually. But as for the bacteriology, you're talking about medical experiments that were done on animals, right?
Yeah, in bacteriological laboratories. They are all over Europe. They conquer the society. They do whatever they want. So
yeah, that is
important authorities at the end of the 19th century. And
that is not much mentioned in Estonian animal welfare resources, which is a bit strange for me, because I know in England, for example, and in Germany, all the medical experiments, that is like one of the most important topics that animal welfare activists they deal with, especially like, for example, with the vivisection thing. And I know in Estonia also, or in the Baltics also, the Riga Society, that was before the Tallinn Society in Latvia, the society members in there also talked a lot about vivisection and about the medical experiments and about how the medical experiments are torture towards animals. But for some reason, the Estonian animal welfare activists, they don't talk about it a lot. It's just left out. I think it might just be that maybe the leaders of the movement, they have other issues they feel are more important. But there's not much talk about medical experiments, just in the sources, which is a bit strange for me. I'm always thinking that maybe I just haven't found the right sources. Maybe it was discussed about, but I haven't found it yet. But they are absent, which is strange. But the second topic is really familiar. The racialization of the Roma, for example, also, that is very much talked in Estonia as well, how they mainly associate the Romas with basically beating their horses and giving them different substances so they could be big and healthy before they sell them. And there is this, I don't know if it's probably a stereotype, but they have many descriptions about how the Romas usually buy the old and sick and weak horses, and then they give them all kinds of substances so they can be healthy and big, and they can sell it for double price. This is one of the racial stereotypes that's very popular. And they have also like 2 or 3 times they discuss even with the President Päts, for example, that in Estonia it should be forbidden for the Romas to have horses because of that, basically. So it's really, really common.
I think that's why they applauded the Romanian adoption about the bear thing, using bears in circuses, because in Romania you have the Romas called ursari, which were walking the bears for amusement in the cities, and they were actually racializing this subject, saying that, okay, the Roma is like as barbarian as an animal and that kind of stuff. So maybe that's why they applauded the. So also this is like quite stereotypical.
Because there were Roma communities in Estonia as well, and that they were really like thought about as being these barbaric animal torturers. And also like in 1930s, the same thing was with the Jews as well. Like there were not many Jews in Estonia, only like 2,000, 3,000 of them, but still it was one of the main topics that animal welfare activists dealt with in the 1930s, that we should ban the Jewish slaughter of animals. that it's inhumane, and they even have this caricature in one of the journals about a Jew who is chasing a cat with a knife. And it turns really racist actually in the 1930s. And also in the journals there are many quotes from Hitler, from Goering. They are really pro-Nazi in the end of 1930s.
Okay, that's not such a nice thing to know. Maybe we go on to the next question. Anastasia had several questions in the chat. We already touched on the rationality of bird, and she has a very wobbly question, so I'll be reading them. We already touched on the rational use of birds for pest management. There was and also there is a recommendation to look at the agricultural journals for that time, and hunting journals. But she has also some factual questions, one about methods. It's like, how did you do the word count in newspaper text? If these are absolute numbers, or how have you been somehow able to calibrate against the scanned text for each period? I mean, that would imply that you know how much, how many texts there were and how many were scanned. So like, is there like a possibility to calibrate the result? And also about the horse-drawn carriages in Tallinn. You said they were used until 1918, and then the horses were replaced with electric motors. So did this replacement take place during the war, or did the city live without public transport for some years? Like, how does that change go there? So these are two very factual questions. We need to scroll up to the questions.
Yeah, I found it now. How did you count the words that were used in newspaper texts? These are...
These are absolute numbers, right? These are the number of hits you have, not...
Yeah, the hits I have. They are digitalized, and in teadigital.com, that's our digital newspaper page. You can find exactly like how many times this word occurs in articles. And these are absolute numbers, and actually many of these articles where this word is used are not like really useful articles. They're like, I don't know, articles about found a hat. You can fetch it from the Animal Welfare Society, for example, something like that. There are many articles that are not have any context actually, has any thing like to say about the movement actually. Yeah, so these are absolute numbers. Yeah.
Yes.
And then horse carriages, not the horse-drawn carriages, but yeah, this was the horse tram in a way, the horse cars. Yeah, they were replaced by the electric motor. The city lived without public transport for 2 years, I think. Because in 1918 the horse tram was closed, but it was not only because of the animal welfare activists. Actually, there were also many strikes by the workers of the horse trams, and there were many problems, many other problems with the horse trams as well. So in 1918 it was closed, and the company that was managing the horse tram in Tallinn, the leaders of the company, they fled Estonia actually during the war. So they were not present anymore in Estonia. And then in 1918, the horse tram was basically cancelled. It was taken away. And I think from 1918 to 1920, there was no public transport like that in Tallinn. That was something that they tried to do for 2 years. They tried with buses, but the buses really didn't work. There were not enough buses. And then I think in 1920, they started with the electric tram. So yeah, for 2 years, the city had no tram, no public transport. But they had the teamsters, and they had the coachmen, and they had their own 2 feet.
Good. Then we have a question from Vanessa also, who has a poor connection. and she is interested in in how close the collaboration with other organizations was. So it was also something that I found very interesting, that there seemed to be a lot of international cooperation. And one of the publications used the same picture as the Berlin Tierschutzverein for its Lesebücher. So is that a coincidence, or was there exchange via publications? Did they take patterns from other organizations? So what do you know more? Do you know more about it?
Yeah, there was lots of cooperation with the different organizations, and many of the pamphlets and of the prints were actually translated from Germany. I think this one also was probably then translated from Germany, and like you can read from the newspapers in the 1800s about having close connections, for example, with the Munich Society, and for example, the Tallinn Society had literature sent to them from Munich, and they actually translated some of the texts also like from German to Estonian. So that was close. They communicated a lot. And also in 1920s, 1930s, there are many articles in the journals of animal welfare also how the activists went to Vienna, went to Munich, went to other parts of Europe as well, once to Holland, I think also, to meet with the other activists in the other organizations as well. So there was this international cooperation, and also actually from the 1860s in Europe, from the year 1860, first I think in Munich, then in other German towns, but then all over Europe, the European Animal Welfare Associations, they held also these international animal welfare congresses for different societies from all over Europe. And one of them was in Vienna, I think I just look, I think it was in 1929. Like in Vienna in 1929, for example, there was this global animal welfare congress that had animal welfare activists like from France, from Germany, from Austria, from different countries in the world. And the Estonian representative also went to Vienna to speak in the Vienna Congress of Animal Welfare. That happened also. So the movement actually was really, really big and international in the 20s, 30s. Right? And also like in the international level, that is a topic that is not really much, there's nothing much written about it, about the animal welfare congresses like in the 1920s and 1930s. Something that should be actually written about, because I know there were congresses, yeah, in Vienna, in Munich, in many different countries in I think, I don't know if every year or every 4 years or something like that. Also an interesting topic.
Thank you. I think next in line is Julia. Finally.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I'm very happy, Karl, to learn about your research. Extremely happy. In September, I, together with my colleague, organized a conference in Herder Institute about life reform movements in the East Central Europe. And we have been talking about temperance movement, vivisection, animal welfare, vegetarianism. So your contribution could have been great to have also in these discussions. So I have been dealing for the last 3-4 years with dietary reform movements in the Russian Empire and vegetarianism in the Russian Empire. So I also had this assumption that there might be connections between vegetarians and animal welfare activists, but there were no connections. And I was also very much surprised not to find any sort of strategic unions between, for instance, vegetarians and animal welfare activists in Odessa or Kyiv. So, and I was also thinking that maybe I just missed I'm missing some sources. I also wanted to ask you about the social makeup of this activism of gender, class. And I was also thinking, Maarja had addressed the most question I had, but I want still to continue with this topic about the analytical framework of your dissertation, because to me, another kind of point of view, another framework that might be applicable for you is the social activism framework. You have very kind of powerful people, activists with social symbolic capital. You have also institutional organization. You have media, several important mediums, not only that should be also read very critically. It's not only about reported facts, it's also about influence in public opinion, right? Promotion of the ideas of the society, etc. So yes, thank you. Briefly, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that is interesting, really, that there's no connection with the vegetarianism and animal welfare. And it seems same in Estonia also. There was the Estonian vegetarianist movement. It's really, really small, but it exists. And for example, there was one man, Rene Ode, who tried to create an Estonian vegetarianist society in 1918, and then he failed, and then instead he created the Tartu Animal Welfare Society. So that there's a small connection, that one failed with the vegetarian society because there was nobody who was interested, and then he started the Animal Welfare Society. And also when you read at the journals, for example, and articles, then it seems that animal welfare activists, they don't know much about vegetarianism. Some of them don't know actually anything about vegetarianism. So there are many times it is said that we cannot stop killing animals because we need animals for food. We cannot live without meat. Like many of assumptions like that are said in the animal welfare journals, and they're not really contested. Everybody agrees that you have to eat meat. It's not possible to be without eating meat. So there's no connection, although it should be logical, especially like nowadays. You think that they go hand in hand, but they don't in the interwar period, at least. There are some exceptions, but they're really few. Like there's one article that argues that maybe we can live without eating meat, but it's just really exceptional. Yeah, so
I have, sorry, just to jump in, I have an article in front of me written by Annu Kanniki and Esther Bardone. Vegetarian food as modern food, attempts to educate the nation of Estonia from the 1900s to the 1930s.
Yeah.
So yeah, just to
so
complete your answer. Yeah, but
absolutely. That talks also about the vegetarianism. There was a vegetarian cookbook published in Estonia, but yeah, I also have not found any connections with the animal welfare movement. It's separate in a way. Thank you for that. Then you asked about the social makeup of the activism, gender and class. The class of the animal welfare activists was more like higher class, especially in the 19th century when the first organizations were created. Then the initiators of the movements were from the Baltic German nobility of Estonia. And also it seems that in the interwar period, actually, the most active members of the movement were often like Baltic German nobles and women. So there was this stereotype in Estonia how an animal welfare activist, it was like an old woman with a Baltic German and who has cats, for example. This stereotype was active in the interwar period. But that reflects a bit about the reality also, that they were mostly upper class, and also the Estonians who participated in the movement, they were mostly from the cities, not farmers, not from the countryside, not from the simple people. So it was mostly higher class. And gender, when you look at the English movement, for example, or the German movement, then women play a really important role in the animal welfare movement. But it does not seem to be the case in Estonia. It was not like a women's movement. I think, at least in the boards, in the leadership of the movement, there are some women, maybe more than in the other social movements, but the most important leaders of the movements are always men. So the class is upper class, but the importance of women is not so important, maybe as in England and Germany. And last
and then
point.
Applicability of social movement framework.
Yeah,
how applicable, if you need to make strategic choices in your dissertation.
It is applicable, absolutely, and it is the question, like, what should I research about? Will I be writing about the animals and the situation of animals and animal welfare, or will I be writing about the organizations and about the voluntary movement or the voluntary associations? And so far, due to the sources, I think I will be more going to the social movement framework, I think, because all of the sources are about the voluntary associations. Most of the animal welfare activism, it comes from the voluntary associations.
I have the same kind of sources, so I understand the dilemmas.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think our time is actually up. So unless there are very, very urgent questions, maybe we can call it today. You can always write to Karl. We hope to also that this will be uploaded in the ESEH YouTube channel, so you can watch it again and then write to Karl with more questions. And of course, we are looking forward to how this work develops and see Karl defend in the coming years and be a proud doctor. So I guess we're not taking more questions. I will save a chat for you, Karl, to think through afterwards as well, so that you can look at the questions and comments. And thank you very much for being around today.